Hey 10th graders, Miss Anthony here. I have a flip video classroom for you guys today. So you guys can get into work tomorrow on your integrated unit. So we're going to go over the respiratory system. Here you have the lungs. So as you know, the respiratory system are the organs for taking in oxygen and getting rid of that carbon dioxide and also that gas exchange that happens within the lungs. So it's not just in and out of our nose and mouth, but also what happens in the very tiny tissues of our lungs. So before we start, I want you guys to put it on pause, take 30 seconds, use your observation skills, and just jot down, take a look at these lungs and show some of the visible differences, things that you can see. And what do you think happened? Where do you think the lungs on the right look that way? So go ahead, pause it, and then come back to me. Okay, welcome back. Some of the differences you may have seen. One, color. Obviously, the ones here on the left are really pink. The ones on the right are a little black. They look like stone. On the left, you can see tiny veins and arteries, really, if you take a look. And on the right, not so much. Some of them, but they just don't look as crisp and clean as the ones there on the left. The lungs on the right look like stone, look like they're hard. The ones on the left, they look a little bit healthier, like they might be soft tissue. But the ones there on the right have been exposed to tobacco. And so that's really the adverse effect that it can have in the big picture. But if that's the big picture, what happens really underneath? You guys are going to find that out, but we're going to take a look at what happens or how our lungs actually work. So this is the cardiopulmonary system. All right, and the cardiopulmonary system are the organs involved in taking in oxygen and expelling carbon dioxide. The circulatory system now is responsible for moving all that oxygenated blood around and getting that carbon dioxide out. Now, the cardiopulmonary system then are the integrated units, so the systems that work together. So today's objectives, we're going to define and name the different organs of the respiratory system, explain how oxygen reaches the lungs and how carbon dioxide is expelled, and then describe how oxygen and carbon dioxide is exchanged in the lungs. So just the basics we are going for today, and you guys will be able then to determine the damage that tobacco causes after that. So your key terms, you have the respiratory system, which is the overall system working together. Here you have your certain terms. Your lungs are the actual big organs. They're protected by the rib cage. They're in our thoracic cavity. The pharynx is the tube that goes from our nose or our mouths and down into our throat. And then the larynx is the valve that separates the upper and lower portions of the throat. It's actually where sound is produced. It's part of the respiratory system. So here you have the nose, the pharynx, and then the larynx, and then it moves down into the trachea. So the trachea is a 12-centimeter tube. It's lined with cartilage, C-shaped cartilage, and this to prevent it from collapsing. It gives it some rigidness, and as the air moves down, then they go into the tubes, the bronchi, which break off the trachea, and then continues into the bronchiole, the smaller tubes that the air continues through. Now, this is one way to think of it. The trachea is the trunk of a tree. Then it branches off into two tree branches, and then it continues to branch and branch and branch into little twigs and leaves. And that would be the bronchioles that are branching and branching, and they're all over the lungs. Now, the alveoli are at the end of the bronchioles, and they're millions of microscopic sacs that actually fill with air when you breathe. They're surrounded by capillaries, and that's where the carbon dioxide and oxygen are exchanged. So capillaries, you need to know, are just tiny blood vessels that deliver oxygen and nutrients and take away carbon dioxide. You'll have more on that in the circulatory system. So how it works: when you breathe air in through our noses, our air moves. The diaphragm relaxes, and the muscles around the rib cage contract, and this is creating space so the air can move in for our lungs to inflate. Then the air moves down into the pharynx, past the larynx, into the trachea. And then the air moves into the bronchi, and at the base of the trachea that splits into each lung, and they continue to branch and branch and branch in these smaller passages. Those are the bronchioles. And at the end of the bronchioles, then the air moves into the alveoli, which is responsible for inflating, that inflating feeling that we feel as we take a breath in. Now remember, those alveoli are wrapped in capillaries. And then there's blood exchange. So those capillaries wrap the alveoli, and they have red blood cells. And this is where the gas exchange occurs. And this is through diffusion. Now, diffusion is when a high concentrate, when there's lots of stuff on this side and lots of stuff on this side, they want to be evened out. They want to go to where there's a less concentration. That's diffusion. We've talked about that before, so think back just a bit to that term. But diffusion happens here. The carbon dioxide is coming back from the body, and the blood gets put into the air sac, into the alveoli, and then the oxygen that's in the air sac wants to get into that blood because it's where it's less concentrated, so it moves over, and then that blood carries it off throughout the body. Now the best part is that this happens 15 to 25 times a minute, which means we're breathing and exchanging 10,000 liters of air a day. So that's the basics. Now, upcoming tomorrow's video, we're going to cover the structure and function of the heart and the circulatory system so that you guys will be able to understand how they're really integrated systems. And then by knowing how healthy heart and healthy lungs work, you guys are going to be able to then do some more research about smoking tobacco and what that does, how that really affects the alveoli, the bronchioles, the heart, the capillaries or veins. For now, I want you to go visit our Edmodo classroom, taking the vocabulary that we just learned and that basic information we just learned. Watch the TED Ed video on how lungs work. After watching that video, take the quiz that's posted for you under the quiz tab. And I will see you in class tomorrow, and we're going to talk more about our project and get deeper into it. All right, guys, have a good night. See you tomorrow.